The channel got the Radiomaster TX16S on the bench. So we're going to get this radio and we're going to get this receiver to talk to each other. And this is the FrSky XM Plus. Because of this video right here, this is the RXSR, and I made a video of what the RXSR was doing, the QX7, how they interacted, things of that nature. So because of this video, it's prompted people to contact me and say, hey, I'm having problems. I can't get the XM Plus to bind with my Radiomaster. And I think there might be some firmware issues. And I'm going to try to put this video together to quickly answer this question of how do I get these two to bind up and communicate. So that's what this video is about. I hope it helps you out, and we'll get started. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is go ahead and open up the XM Plus. Get the package out of here. So I was kind of curious when I was asking people, I kind of wanted to see for myself if it put any type of label, because I know like some of the RXSRs where there was a sticker, depending on where you got it from, there was a sticker on it that would tell you what version was on it. With the XM Plus, there's 3 different versions. There's like a 171, I think, don't quote me, 170313 firmware, which is the old firmware. And then there's a V2, and then there's also the Access. And I'm not sure what they're shipping the brand new ones out with. And so far there's no, so on the actual piece here, there's no indication of what firmware is flashed to it. These are just pins in case you want to solder those pins in and run it off of a servo lead, and then that's it. There's nothing else in the package. And then on the package itself, I'm not seeing any identifier of what firmware is on this. And to the best of my knowledge, you can't just plug this in and it doesn't show you what version is on there. So looking through all this information here, I'm not seeing like a stamp or any notation whatsoever of what firmware version they have on this. I'm not seeing anything in here about flashing it to a different firmware. So I think that's kind of the problem that we're dealing with. I think the problem is that this doesn't have correct firmware to communicate with the Radiomaster. The Radiomaster doesn't have Access. That's a proprietary. I tell you what, if you want to go back to that video, I'll put a link right here for the RXSR, and look at the description. I've updated it. I've like all my thoughts are in that description, and I don't really want to talk about it or regurgitate all that again. But it's very, very frustrating. But your Radiomaster can't run Access, because Access firmware is proprietary to FrSky, and as to my best of my knowledge, you can't run it on this. The version 2 firmware, I'm not clear on whether or not it correctly works or if there's issues with that. So what I would do is I have 9 quadcopters here running on one of these on my Radiomaster. So I don't have any issues. However, I bind and run all of my XM Pluses on the 170313 FCC. So that's what I'm going to do in this video. We're gonna find that information on the internet. We're gonna power this up. We're gonna see first of all stock. I'll go ahead and I'll put some wires to this, and we'll run this stock and see if it actually works right out of the box. And we'll go through some of the procedures on how to bind it the way it should be bound and what the LEDs mean. So this should be it's going to be a lengthy video because I want to make sure I'm explaining this to a newer person. Somebody that might not have as much experience, because if I just throw a whole bunch of stuff out at once, you're really not going to get much out of it if you're not familiar with some of the terminology. So hopefully we can get started here. the first thing I want to do is I'm going to go to my transmitter. I'm going to show you what version, my internal module. So if we go up here, we're going to act like we're going to set up a new model. Okay, so model select. And then we'll just hold down on it again, and then we'll go create model. Okay, and then I'm going to use plain. I don't have a multi-rotor option, so I use plain. And then, does your model have a motor? Yes. What channel is it on? I use something, the channel mapping. Okay, so the channel map in Betaflight is TAER, T-A-E-R. So T is for throttle, and that's my motors. Okay, so I want to put this on channel 1, and then we're going to page over one time. Number of ailerons on your model. On a quadcopter, you only have 1. So you get rid of the 2 and go all the way back 1 forward, 1 or 2 with Y cable, which it's just 1, okay? Because there's, on an airplane, there's a cable that makes it. Anyway, we only have 1 channel set up for the aileron, and we want that on channel 2, okay? And then we're gonna page, and then, does your model have flaps? No, we don't have flaps on a multi-rotor. So then we go to pick the tail configuration of your model. So now we have, let me go ahead and click on this all the way back, and 1 forward says 1 channel for elevator and 1 channel for rudder. So that's the ER, so T-A-E-R. So these are the last 2 channels. So you get all your stick movements. I have videos that explain all this in detail. But just to set this up so you can get to your bind and you have your model already logged in, this is something you need to do. So channel 2, now we want that channel, oops, we want that to be channel 3, and then channel 4 is already set for our rudder, okay? So channel 3 is elevator. When you're in Betaflight and the AUX channels, or not AUX channel, but receiver, the receiver tab in Betaflight, that's where this is important, because the first 4 channels of your receiver is your sticks. So that's how I set up all my models. So then you're just going to page over, and everything's done. So right now it came up as model 37. It's kind of hard to see. I'm like looking over this thing. I've got a lot of lighting on it, so it's hard for me to see the screen. I hope it's coming in clear for you. So right now it's coming in model 37. That's the one that we have chosen here. So we'll return out, and then right here it says model 37, so you know you haven't missed anything. And then you can go in to model here and model 37, and then you can scroll back 1 time, not forward, but roll back 1 time, and then go up here to where it says internal RF. I don't have anything in the JR bay. My Crossfire's up on a shelf, so I don't have anything in here. We're running off the multi-protocol module inside here using this 2.4 gig antenna. Okay, so we're gonna go to internal. So we need to turn that on. Okay, and then that has to be multi, and then we come over here, not fly sky, that's usually what it comes up first, is fly sky, FLY. We want FR sky. Okay, so we're just going to page over until we see FR sky, and then it says FR sky RX. And you go 1 more, it says FR sky D16. This is a D16 receiver. So this is the protocol that we need. Okay, so we choose that. Oops. Let me back out of here a second. I got a wrong channel on that. FR Sky D16, then scroll down to the receiver number, and this is my 36 unit on this radio. So I'm just going to choose 36. That's how I do it. You do it your own way if you want. So now I have everything set up. So that should work. I should be able to bind up to this with no issues. So multi-rotor FR Sky D16 and channel 1 through 16, and then we're going to go into bind here. And when we push bind, it'll say telemetry on, telemetry off, telemetry on, telemetry off for the other channels. Okay, if you're running RxSR that has telemetry, this has no telemetry. This does not transpond any telemetry back to your transmitter. So all the information you're going to see in OSD and Betaflight, but you're not going to get back any information on this. I don't know how else to explain it and make this video shorter, but anyway, you're going to go telemetry off because there's no sense in having extra memory being used. Alright, so that's the end of that. Now it's binding. Okay, it's looking for this right now. We don't have it powered up, so nothing's happening. So we're just going to hit return. I'm going to turn my transmitter off while I do other things. So we're going to bind that model. So we're done with the transmitter side of things. On this, it's a real stinker when this thing is in the quadcopter, because you have to take it out, or you have to figure out a way to fish some wires in here. Okay, if you have it pinned in with these, which I never do, I just put silicon wire on these. I'm gonna use 30 gauge silicon wire on these 3 pads, and these 3 pads are simply marked on this. So if you turn your bind button, you see this bind button right here? It's right there. So if you turn your bind button this way, so that's the orientation of your, let me see if I can zoom in for you here. Alright, so we have our S-Bus signal, so that's going to be your RX1 on your flight controller, and then 5-volt supply. So there should be a 5-volt pad, so the output of that pad would be 5 volts, and then ground. So this is pretty simple. RxSR has an extra one for telemetry, so it goes to a TX pad. We don't have to deal with that with the XM Plus. Pretty simple, just 3, but we need to make sure that we're putting ground and 5 volt and not vice versa. You know, going through Facebook and stuff, there's a handful of people that had the S-Bus and the 5 volts swapped, and that's why they were having issues. Or the ground. So make sure you get these in lined up. But you're looking here at this bind button and these 2 antennas in the upright position here to match orientation. So the other thing is that they make it square. The S-Bus is square. Okay, so let's go ahead and get this wired up. We're going to get some 30 gauge wire real quick. Alright, so I just grabbed a hold of some wire here. So I'm going to use the white for S-Bus, and I'll use the green for ground, and I'll use the orange for 5 volt. So I'll go ahead and solder this up real quick. Alright, so we got everything wired up here, and I left some length on that. I'm not sure exactly where I'm going to put this in the frame of the new build that I'm doing. I don't know if you've seen my last video, but I'm working on, this is a frame by Pyrodrone for the new 5-inch ultralight, super duper. Under 200 grams is what I'm after, but we'll see. So we're going to put this in there, and I may end up putting Crossfire in that thing if it really impressed me. Like if I have a really good time with it, I might put Crossfire in it. But anyway, I get some pretty good range out of XM Pluses. So I have it wired up. So I have my ground, my 5 volt, and my S-Bus. And on this end, I have the S-Bus wire just snipped off, insulated, and then I have my hot and my ground exposed, so that I can put 5 volts to this. So I can go ahead and put 5 volts to this. I have a video. I'll try to put a card up here for you if you're interested in seeing how to make your own 5 volt bench. So we'll go ahead and turn the, so right now we have a blinking, I don't know if you can see that or not. Have a blinking, see how it pulsates. So that means that it's not seeing anything, it's not registering anything. So let's go ahead and get the transmitter and we'll bind it. We'll turn this off so there's no power going to it. Let me zoom out. And then I'm gonna put a roll of solder on my hot line over here. I don't want that coming in contact with my ground or the component itself. Let's grab the transmitter, power it back on. Alright, and then we have our model already set up. Oh yes, we need our fail-safe set up. So hit return, hold down the model. So fail-safe, I always set that to no pulse. We just have little quadcopters, little 5-inch rippers, so no pulse. So if anything happens, it just basically hits the ground. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and click on the bind here. So we have the power off. Let me see if I can get this back in the frame for you. So we have this off. Oh my, look at that little straggler. Ooh, that ain't good. That'll find its way into something for sure. Sorry. Alright, so we have the power off to our XM Plus. We're going to set our bind, and once we hear it, well, no telemetry. Okay, now we power this on while holding down on the bind button. So we're going to hold down on that bind button, and see that went off? That only runs for a few seconds. So I have to hit it again. Hold down on the bind button. Power it on, let off the bind button. And now we have, it's not blinking anymore, it's solid. So we have a solid, I know it's hard to see in the film here, but I have a solid green, yellow green, and a solid red. Okay? But that's not bound up. So now we turn off the power to this, turn it back on, and we should be bound. That should be it. We should have a green, and this is what all the people that have contacted me are saying. It's so frustrating because I try to explain things over, you know, it's just one of them deals. One picture is 1,000 words, right? So you can see that this is not bound up. It's blinking red. There's no solid green. So that it didn't work. So let's try again. Just for giggles, we'll try again. I'll power it off. I'll hold down on the bind button. Okay, we'll go ahead and hit, oops, we'll go ahead and hit bind on our transmitter. We'll listen for the chirp. Okay, and then we'll power up. Okay, let off the bind button. And you can hear this is still chirping, it never bound up. So now we power this off. I'm trying to hold my hand here so you can see the LEDs. It ain't working out too well. So I turn that on and it's blinking. It won't bind. So there's the issue that we're going to have to deal with. This is not an easy issue to deal with because FR Sky has made this really hard. So what we need to do is if you have an QX7, let me pause this real quick and grab my other gear. So I had to pull my QX7 I've got in mothballs over here. So let's pull this dude out, okay? Power it up.
Welcome to OpenTX.
I try to keep battery juice in this thing. Okay. So on the center here, and you can page over to your SD card information, and then here's firmware. So these are all the different kind of firmware that I have. So in the bottom here, I actually have the XM Plus right there. So yeah, it is 0. So 170313. And that's the older version that works with the ACCST protocol. If this says access, you know, then this one, it would be different. Isn't that frustrating? I don't even want to get into all of that. But anyway, the Radio Master needs this older version. Okay, if you have one of these radios, and that's how I flash them, you flash them right here on the bottom. I'm showing you this because I doubt you have one. But right there, there's a servo lead that goes in there. And that servo lead is basically coming from here. These 3 wires are connected to a servo lead that plugs in here, and then you can flash you can flash your external module. So in this video, I'm not going to be able to use this because you probably don't have one of these. So I'm going to just turn this off. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to disconnect all this, and then on the radio side, I have the JR bay here. These pins right here, we can use them. See if the lighting can get in there. So these pins here, we have to put our servo pin on. Let me see if I can grab one. So here's something that comes with the RXSR. So it has the 3 wires. There's a servo head. And then here is the plug for the RXSR. But in this case, we're going to have to cut that off. The other thing is, if you have a kit like this, so you can make your own pins. So you can put like a 3. You can even use individuals. You can make your own pins to go on the back side of your XM Plus. Now, one of the people said that they received in this package, which I did not, they received one of these, which is kind of interesting because I did not receive it. And then, of course, you have these 3 pin here. This won't work on your transmitter. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and shut my radio off because I don't need that on right now. I need to solder this onto this, and we need to make sure also on the back of our radio. But before we can solder this together here, we need to make sure that we understand the polarity in the back of the radio here. So let me get something to protect the face of this. All right, so I just grabbed simple foam, and that'll keep things from getting messed up. And I don't know if you'll have to do this to yours or not, but we just need to get some screws removed here so I can open up the back of this thing. Let me go ahead and pop the case open real quick here. Is that zoomed in good enough for you? So the pin header here, you can see for the JR bay. So you have pin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So on here, Silkscreen says that this first pin here, or first pad I should say, is a ground. And that's what we're after. We're trying to figure out which one of these 5 pins is ground. The bottom pin here should be our S-bus signal so our XM or XM Plus. Okay, remember the square one is our S-bus. So this one here would go to that first pin. So when we created our harness here, we need to plug it in correctly. So is that correct? You know, S-bus, 5 volt, and ground. Let's find out where ground is. So we're going to go to that first pad there, and then we go pin 1. No, because that should be S-bus. Pin 2 is ground. So pin 3 should be our 5 volt. So now that we identified which one is ground, we can set up our servo pin correctly. So as you know, we have the yellow one, which would be going to our white, would go here. So we put that on there like that. But that red and black are wrong. If we were to plug this in right now and try to flash, we would ruin our XM Plus, because our XM Plus isn't wired that way. Okay, so now we know we need to change this. So we need to take these pins apart and change it. Let me zoom out here. So a little test, make sure everything was right. So I am going to have to switch out the 5-volt and ground on this. Not bore you with the detail. I'll put this all back together. I just want to get in here and make sure I was right. And I'll get this all put back together, and I will change the pins out on this and solder it to the wires here on my XM Plus. So I'll go ahead and get that done real quick. All right, so last thing, got this all wired up here. So we have our signal that's going to go into our radio master, and then ground in the middle. That's the one we check continuity for, and then the third one is going to be our 5 volts. And we are going to insulate these three from each other. So I don't want these coming into contact. This is the solder joint. If this is permanent for you, you know, you're going to run a servo on lead on the end of yours, then, you know, you want to shrink tube these or do a little something more permanent than what I'm doing. I'm just going to put some black tape on here to keep these from touching each other. And then have it, I can pull it apart when I'm done. You get what I'm saying? So we have everything insulated from its neighbor, and we're going to set him aside. We're going to be working with the pins here in the back of the JR bay. So 1, 2, and 3, and then these 2 pins here we're not going to use. Okay? We can't do anything yet. How I like to do it, you can go in the bottom here and pull out the SD card. Okay? So here's the SD card. All right? So we'll take that SD card and we'll plug this into our laptop. So let's go jump over to the computer. Isn't this great? Let's go jump in the computer here. All right, so we're at FR Sky's homepage. So we're on their website here, and we can go over to search, and we can type in XM Plus and search. And so we have XMR XM Plus. So we want this one, and this is the ACC. All right, and we're going to ACCST D16 firmware. So now we have the V2, the V2.1.2, the V2.1.0. I don't use these. We're going to go here to the history form of downloading. Alright, so we have the download here. We're just going to drag it into an empty folder, and then we'll go ahead and unpack it here. Alright, so now we have our folder unpacked, and you can see here that we have a list of different choices to make. These 3 here are for the UK. I'm in the United States, so I'm going to focus in on the FCC versions. Okay, and the 170313 is what I'm looking for, and I am going to choose RSSI channel on 8 or channel on 16. So these 2 did a bug fix. This is the one that we're going to go after. So now we could take our SD card from the radio master, and we could plug it in. And if you look here, it'll say firmware. So double click on firmware, and this is where we're going to put this information. So we're just going to drop it right in there. Okay, and then we can close that, and we can close this. That folder that we just closed is on the desktop for future reference, or I'll just throw it away. It doesn't matter now. So we're done with their website, and we're done with our SD card. So let's jump back over to the bench. So pretty simple. You know, just going in here and downloading the older version of firmware is what we need to do. All right, so let's go ahead and eject our SD card and jump back to the bench. All right, so we're back on the bench. You gotta love the process. So our SD card now is uploaded with the firmware that we need for our XM Plus. So we're just gonna put that back in here. Okay. All right, and we're done with that. So now we turn on our radio and let's go find that firmware.
Hey, props off. What are you gonna fly now?
All right, so we're gonna go up here to System, and we're gonna scroll. We're gonna page to Firmware. So that's the folder that we put it in. Click on Firmware, come down here. So now we have on our SD card, we have XM Plus FCC, because I live in the United States, 170313. Okay, so now we can use that. Before we do anything, we need to go ahead and plug in the servo pin. So now we have, remember we had the signal, ground, and 5-volt. So we're going to plug that in to the back of here. See if I can articulate this so you can see. Slide that down, make a nice connection. We do not want anything to happen to our connection while we're doing this. Oops, make sure we don't back up one. Let me make sure we don't push any buttons either. So I'm going to hold this up. You can see here we have voltage going to it. So we're going to click on here and it says flash internal module. We do not want to flash the internal module. Go one down to flash external module. That's a big deal because this radio, my radio, has the multi module in it. We don't want to flash firmware to our multi module. The external is the JR bay. That's for your Crossfire, and I'm not going to get into history. So flash external module. So we're going to hold that down for a second and let go. And now we don't want to really mess with anything here, but you can see that the LEDs. So pulsing right now, I have the green light is the LED is pulsing pretty rapid, and then the red LED is just kind of a constant blink. Okay, so if you don't have that going on, then there's something not right. So now this is real time. I was going to fast forward, but honestly I like to know how long it takes in case it stops for you. You would know. Okay, that was done. Now there's no LED, and then it came back. The green is off and the red is just lightly flashing. Flashing success. So we're going to return back to our main screen. Now we can go into our Model 37 and bind this up. But I'm going to disconnect it from the transmitter. So we're done with that. The firmware should be on there. And now you can put it in your quadcopter. You solder it up to your 5-volt pad, whatever the case may be. In my case, I am just simply cutting off the 5-volt source, and I don't need the S-bus. So I'm done with this. We're flashed and we're done. You don't have to do that again, unless you change your radio or something. So now I have my ground and hot. I'm going to grab my ground and hot here. This makes it so much easier when you have a 5-volt bench power supply. Like I said, I made a video on how to make a real inexpensive one from the thrift store. Let me grab some weight to put on this one here. I do not want them touching or playing around. Let me see if I can get this in view for you. You know, this whole process is so fast and easy, not having to film it. But I really think this is the best way to go, so you can visually see what's happening. So we have our bench supply hooked up to ground and hooked up to 5 volts. Okay. I just want to. So now we can go into our model. So we'll just hold down our model button there, and then we'll back up. Go up to where we are here. So we have our multi FrSky D16, and we have our fail-safe set up to no pulse. All right, I'm gonna hold down on the bind button here. See if I can get that pushed down. Hold down on that, and then I am going to start the binding. I'm going to set my transmitter far away, about 4 feet. I'm going to power up the XM Plus, let go of the bind button, and right now I have a solid yellow and a solid red. Okay, but like I said, the transmitter's over there, about 4 feet away, 3.5 foot away. If you try to bind them right next to each other, a lot of times it blows this out and it can't recognize it. So I'm going to turn off the XM Plus, and now I'm going to power it back up. Okay, so now we have a solid green light. It's kind of pulsating for the camera, but that's the 60 hertz of my camera recording. For me, my naked eye, I'm seeing a solid green light. Okay, so we bring our transmitter back. Sometimes when you get these really close, this will actually stop. It won't be solid green anymore. All right, so we're bound up, and now we want to turn off the transmitter. And then it went to a solid red. No more green, just solid red. So let me see if I can hold this thing for you, so you can kind of see can you see down in there? All right, so the LED, now power it back up.
Hey, props off. When are you gonna fly now?
Switch warning.
Yeah. All right, so we're bound up to that. And now the red went away and the green came on. But like I said, if this transmitter is too close, they don't like each other. They don't like to be that close. So this is ready to go into a model and start working now. So that's kind of I'm going to shut that off. We'll shut this off. We're done with our 5-volt power supply. This is pretty slick. It makes it a lot easier. But that's basically the best way that I know how to get the XM Plus to work with the Radiomaster TX16S. If you know a better way, I would like, if you know a video that shows a better way of doing this, let me know. I'm unaware of a better way of doing it. But that's it. This is ready to go into a quadcopter, S-Bus, 5-volt and ground. And the rest of your transmitter setup is there for you. So, hey, you know what? I hope this helped. If it did, give me a thumbs up and subscribe. If you hated it, man, you give me a thumbs down. It all works. Enjoy the breeze.